my next activity after network, so that's good.
Ace, what'd you say?
I was just asking Alexander, there she is. Is
There she is,
Alexander
yeah.
one of the speakers?
She's one of
Yeah.
our speakers.
Okay, there you go.
Who's Interfaith Power and Light? That's what I want to know.
We will find out.
Interfaith Power and Light, tell us who you are.
Well, just a sec.
Say that again?
It's Joelle. I just need to
Oh.
rename myself.
Oh, it's Joelle. Okay, I don't know if you guys know Joelle, but
Hi, Joelle. But Joelle, you've heard it all before. I would have put in something new if I knew you were coming.
Yeah.
all right, welcome everybody. We'll wait just like another 30 seconds and then we will get started. Okay. So welcome. It is wonderful to see you all. This is being recorded, as you know, so that we can make it available to everyone else who is unable to join us, but who has registered. I am Nina Beth Carden. I'm the chair of the Masorti Environmental Sustainability Initiative, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the 8th webinar in our Weeks of Learning and Doing webinar series, which is a series of webinars that we're running through the period of the Omer from Pesach to Shavuot. With a generous grant from Karen Kayemet L'Yisrael, this initiative was launched on Tu B'Shvat this year to promote living sustainably and taking action to fight climate change within the conservative movement's institutions. Our first step was to enhance the conservative movement's partnership with Adamah's Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition. And this program, which I think many of you know about, supports synagogues in their efforts to create their own climate action plans. To date, almost 70 congregations have registered for JCLC, and we are still on a campaign to recruit many more. We also collaborated with the rabbis and scholars to create a unique set of weekly insights and teachings on sustainability that enhance our celebration of this period of the Omer. And you can find those writings and insights on exploringjudaism.org, which is a website for the conservative movement that speaks of and teaches all sorts of issues about Jewish learning, Jewish spirituality, Jewish ritual. It's a wonderful website. You should check it out, exploringjudaism.org. And now the Weeks of Learning and Doing webinar series, what we're doing now, offers education, information, and resources about environmental sensibility and sustainability from a Jewish perspective. So the webinar that we're going to hear today focuses on Jewish advocacy, courage in action, because as we know, learning is critical, action is just as critical. Learning without action is empty. All these recordings will be available online. Some of them are already available. You can go to the Conservative Judaism channel on YouTube and find our recordings there. Our hope is that these efforts will inspire and motivate you all to enhance your sustainability actions and commitment and the sustainability actions and commitment of the institutions that you are affiliated with to protect planet Earth, our common home. So it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our presenters today, beginning with my dear friend, Dr. Mirla Goldsmith, whose PhD is in environmental psychology. And she is also the co-chairperson of the Jewish Earth Alliance, a national grassroots network raising a moral voice on climate change to the United States federal government. Mirla, aren't you also the founder of JEA? Are you there? Mirla, where'd you go?
Yes, I'm the co-founder.
You're the co-founder.
Rabbi
Okay.
Devorah Lynn.
Okay, so the co-chairperson and the co-founder. Mirla directed Chazon's Jewish Greening Fellowship, a program funded by UJA Federation of New York that mobilized 55 synagogues, JCCs, day schools, and social service organizations to respond to climate change. Mirla went to the UN Summit on Climate Change in Copenhagen, representing 22 American Jewish organizations. She was the leading Jewish organizer for the People's Climate Marches in New York and Washington, and has shared Jewish environmental teachings in Kathmandu, in the Salisbury Cathedral, at the Parliament of World Religions, and in other interfaith settings. And you play the ukulele, don't you? Yeah, and you lead us in song, which is really great. So Meryl is just a powerhouse. We're delighted to have her here. Adriane Leveen, Ace, are you a doctor? You should have a doctor in front of your name.
I am a doctor. I have a PhD, but I don't need to have a doctor in front of my name. And usually I'm an ace on environmental calls, but you can call me Dr. Adriane Leveen. That's who I am. And I'll answer to it even.
All right, Dr. Adriane Leveen, also known as ACE, has just stepped down as senior lecturer in Hebrew Bible at Hebrew Union College and Jewish Institute of Religion, that is HUCJIR. She has written 2 books, Biblical Narratives of Israelites and Their Neighbors, Strangers at the Gate, and Memory and Tradition in the Book of Numbers. She has published in a number of scholarly journals, including Proof Texts, Journal for the Study of the Old Testament, and the Harvard Theological Review. Her passions include teaching biblical prophets and the Book of Job. As a volunteer, she is a founding member of Jewish Climate Action Network, New York City, on the steering committee of Third Act Faith, serves on Adamah's Jewish Climate Leadership Council, and a former facilitator of J-Tree USA, now part of Adamah. I don't know how both of you fit all of the things that you do into one 24-hour day. Just amazing what you've been able to accomplish. And our third presenter, who actually will be our first presenter this afternoon, is Alexandra Stillman, a member of Adamah's Jewish Youth Climate Movement. And Alexandra, if you could both introduce yourself and potentially, in case other people don't know, Adamah and, of course, the Jewish Youth Climate Movement. I turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Alexandra Stillman. I am 17. I live in Manhattan in New York. And I've been a part of JYCM, also known as a Jewish Youth Climate Movement, for around a year now. I am the director of our policy working group. So I can't really speak on behalf of Adamah, but on behalf of the Jewish Youth Climate Movement, just because that's what I'm more familiar with. That's what I've done a lot of work with. We are a multi denominational or pluralistic space for all Jewish teens who from across the country to come together and work on different parts of Jewish advocacy. So for me specifically, I'm in the policy working group. So it combines my interest of public policy with my Judaism, with advocacy. It's a super cool and super unique opportunity. And so this year we've been doing a lot of projects, such as working on demands for what we want to see in the future by the end of the Shemitah cycle. So, I mean, that's kind of a glimpse into what we're doing at JYCM, but more broadly, we are a pluralistic space for Jewish teens to exercise their advocacy in tandem with their Judaism.
Do you want to say more about, in particular, what you're doing and what you like to share with us?
Yeah, so should I go into the slides right now?
Go into the slides.
Perfect. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen. If not,
we can see. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Let me present. Okay, so before I begin my presentation, I just want to acknowledge the land in which I stand on. And so this is Muncie Lenape land. The Muncie Lenape inhabited the majority of Manhattan before it was later colonized by the Dutch. So just a bit more about JYCM. We were founded by the leading Jewish environmental organization, Adamah, in 2020. And as I said, we are a Gen Z-led movement dedicating to combating climate change and environmental injustice from a Jewish lens. So our goal is to make taking collective action towards climate justice a central defining feature. Oh, it seems as though my screen sharing is paused. Okay, is it better now?
Yep, we have the first slide. Yep.
Okay. So here, I'm just reading out the slides. So as I was saying, our goal is to make taking collective action towards climate justice a central and defining feature of what it means to be Jewish over the next decade, thereby empowering the next generation of Jewish youth to be leaders in our fight to build a sustainable and equitable world for all. So now getting into more of why I joined JYCM, my kind of niche within JYCM, and what we're doing. So I come from a pretty like spiritual family, in the sense of, you know, my parents were very adamant about me going to Hebrew school throughout my childhood, but past my bat mitzvah, they weren't really super intense about me connecting with my Judaism, right? So as a result of that, I kind of lost a lot of the connection, which, and, you know, I think that's, looking back, that was really unfortunate, but also kind of good in terms of where I am now. And I'll explain why. So I received an email about a year ago talking about JYCM, and I thought it was really interesting because I had been involved in local climate movements, and I was interested in getting to know myself better, but also as in my heritage as a Jewish woman. So last summer, I was selected to be on the Jewish Youth Climate Movement's National Leadership Board. And so through this, I went through a lot of orientations, learned about more deeply about the history of anti-Semitism, how anti-Semitism and climate advocacy are super interwoven, different aspects of climate advocacy that I wasn't introduced to, even doing grassroots work with a lot of major organizations. And so through this, I cultivated a deep passion and understanding for my Jewish history. So actually, I love to tell this story. So this year I did an independent study about Jewish feminism, and I completely attribute my interest in doing that to my involvement with JYCM, because they, beyond just being a hub of super motivated and passionate teens, it's a place where we're able to partake in cultural discussions and, you know, motivate myself to explore about my history in a personal setting. So aside from that, so what we've been doing this year, I can speak mainly on behalf of the policy working group, just because that's the group that I co-lead. So I'm also super involved in local politics. And again, I'm super interested in how my Jewish identity intersects with that, because I know that the way that I encourage people to vote, my parents' vote, is largely interwoven with our religion and how our religious principles guide how we vote. So this year we've been working on this thing called the Shemitah Framework document, in which we have, I believe it's up to 18 demands now, and that ranges from decarbonization, community care, racial injustice, combating white supremacy, combating anti-Semitism, all these super prevalent issues in our community, whether that be affecting Judaism specifically or affecting society writ large. And so we have this demand framework. We've been working on it for about the entirety of the year, and we intend to publish it. And it's basically just a list of demands and how JYCM kind of takes a strong standpoint on this. Another smaller thing that we worked on this year, but mainly last year, was a policy target list in which we took about 20 policies from the states in which we're all from. So for example, for me, I worked on New York. We had someone work on something from Michigan, something from Illinois. So it was a super broad list of topics, but they all had to do with climate change. And we compiled, just a summary of what they were, what people are doing, just to promote these policies, these super integral policies that a lot of people don't know about. So that's my story and what we've been doing at the policy working group. So now getting on to the larger story of JYCM and kind of more into what we do. So to dissect the name, so Jewish. Judaism teaches us justice, justice you shall pursue. And throughout history, our people have bravely advocated for justice. As a people connected to the environment and as a movement dreaming of collective liberation, we must pursue a sustainable and equitable world for all. Youth. We recognize the moral authority youth wield to create a ripple effect that brings our families, institutions, and communities along with us, ultimately steering the direction of the entire Jewish community. And as youth, we lead our communities to stand with us. Climate. The climate crisis poses a great existential threat of our times. All communities, including Jews, must protect our shared home if we are to survive as peoples, cultures, and species of the earth. Finally, movement. JYCM will catalyze a cultural shift that makes taking collective action towards climate justice a central defining feature of Jewish identity in the 21st century, mobilizing Jews en masse to join the broader climate movement around us. So here are just some photos. We have this annual retreat. Last year we had it at Pearlstone Retreat Center in Baltimore, Maryland. It's a great time for us to connect with each other, connect with nature, partake in specific rituals, a super fun experience. So as I was saying, in terms of our Shemitah demands, by the end of our current Shemitah cycle, these are just some of our demands. Firstly, Jewish youth in every context are mobilizing their synagogues, schools, institutions, and communities to fight for climate justice. But secondly, climate justice is a visible central tenet expressed within Jewish religious values, cultural traditions, social activities, and historical existence. Thirdly, we can point to a series of comprehensive and specific policy, monetary, and social changes in the country around which the Jewish community directly built power. Fourthly, the public has compelled governments and institutions directly responsible for the crisis to enact bold structural changes that will combat climate change. So, kind of looking at this from a holistic standpoint, all of these measurements will contribute to our overarching movement vision to live in a more equitable and sustainable world for all. So as I kind of mentioned before, we had broken these down into different specific demands so that it's more user-friendly, and we try to break down every single term that we use, such as decarbonization, electrification, redlining, a broad scope of terms. So these are some past major actions. So in 2021, we had the Black Rock action in New York City. Unfortunately, I was not part of JYCM for that. Really wish I was, though. And then in 2023, we had the Aleem campaign action in Newark. And so we had the Shoresh campaign in the fall of 2022. So again, this was a large series of various things that JYCM did. So firstly, we have the Black Rock action with Green Faith. We have the Boston Day of Education and Action. So this kind of encompasses the broad variety of things that we do as a movement. So it's not just actions, or it's not just training, it's not just developing rituals, but it's the holistic approach that we take that makes our movement so effective and also so empowering to not only the members of the movement, such as myself, but also other people. And then again, we had the New York City Day of Education and Action. So looking to the future, for those that would like to take action with us, we love support. That's what we thrive on. We thrive on community, we thrive on communal support. So get your Jewish communities to join the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition and write a climate action plan. Encourage them to have teens as writers on the plans. You can also donate to JYCM, or encourage young people in your life to join or create a JYCM kfutza, or reach out to your synagogue's youth or education director. So that is it for my part. I do have to go right now, but Aaron can stay and take any questions. I thank you so much for this platform and giving JYCM a chance to speak. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, Alexandra, I'm looking at you. It looks like you're in a hallway with lockers behind you, that you took the time from your busy schedule to join us, and you had the presence of mind to be able to make this presentation. That's all very impressive. So we're just so delighted. And for everybody to know, fall 2028 is the beginning of the next Shemitah cycle. So we've got 4 years to meet those goals. So we're going to try to help you do that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Go do what you need to do.
Hi.
All right. A little breathless. Boy, it's exhausting just listening to her energy. It's really just, that's why we need the youth, for the energy that they have and the passion that they have and the wisdom that they bring, untainted by our skepticism and frustrations and pain of life. Okay. Ace, we want to turn this over to you. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Aaron, I think I've met you before. You look really familiar to me, that big smile of yours. Please pass on to Alexandra that everywhere I go, all I talk about is the youth, climate, Jewish. I never get the syllables right, or the letters, but I always say that what you all are doing is just a real inspiration. And she just carried it forward for me. So I can say yet again, what you've all been doing is really, really important. And I happen to be on the Adamah Jewish Climate Coalition Council, as is Mirla. So, you know, we always say rah rah for you guys. So that's really great. I'm glad to see the overlap. Anyways, for the rest of you, it's very hard to know who I'm speaking to in an occasion like this. So some of what I might be talking about, you'll say, yeah, I know, but hopefully it will be passed on to people who might think more about what I'm proposing here, which is nothing revolutionary. It's just making the obvious really important. So I'll just start by telling you I did just step down from the Hebrew Union College as a senior lecturer in Hebrew Bible after 25 years as a professor there in New York and in California before then. And I will therefore in a moment share some climate Torah with you. But first I want to explain how I got so involved in climate work. So I'm following some of the same questions that were asked of Alexandra. I grew up in a small town, Elmira, New York, with a river at the end of my street. Towering over the other bank of that river were very beautiful rolling hills. My backyard was huge and full of trees under which I could play with my friends. And for many, many summers before I was old enough to go off to Tel Yehuda, which is the Young Judea camp, I played in that backyard. And the reason that I start with this is because that beautiful natural setting where I often found myself outdoors, I think really helped me understand and develop a very lasting love for nature, but without knowledge at that time, the innocence of youth, of how threatened it would become because of climate change and fossil fuels. So how did I become that informed climate person that I feel that I am today? Influence number one. So I'm going to give you the 3 influences and culminate with a story about 2 state senators that I think are the end of this story of my life, and Mirla's also, and many of you on this call. I only realized just how threatened was our climate, I'm sad to say, as an adult. And that was only thanks to Al Gore in the year 2006, when I first watched An Inconvenient Truth. It changed my life and my commitments. His data and his presentation gave me very specific details about the effects and the consequences of a warming planet that I found really too persuasive to ignore. And it made me realize I had to stand up and get involved in the climate crisis that now more accurately can be called a climate emergency. That old cliche is still a good one. Be part of the solution and not the problem. And sometimes a very simple, straightforward insight is the most powerful. And that's what his movie offered me. Influence 2, my own Jewish tradition and my own Jewish community. I heard years ago Rabbi Michael Paley speak, and this is what he said, and this has stayed with me ever since. If we, the Jewish community, and now I'm paraphrasing him, cannot make the climate crisis a profound concern of ours, worthy of our attention and our energy, then we will lose the next generation of young Jews who will wonder why we did not do enough or anything really to stop the existential threat of our lifetimes. That, as I said, really stuck with me. And I will say, to address Aaron again, I really feel what the youth are doing is a response in some way to what Michael Paley was asking for, I would say maybe 15 years ago. So, you know, better late than never. As a biblical scholar, so I'm still in my Jewish community influence mode, I found inspiration in 2 biblical texts. And I was also asked as a scholar of the Bible to say something about where I think the Bible teaches us. First, God teaches Job in the book of Job that actually human beings are just part of creation, not the ruler, not the conqueror. And that message inspires me to realize that we are just one of the many living species in this planet of ours. Our seas, our lands, our heavens are all full of so many species. Our ecosystems are so interdependent. We are just part of that creation, part of it, not the rulers of it. And therefore, I think we really do owe it to our tradition and to our creation to recognize, in my opinion, our profound and deep responsibilities to the rest of the created world. And if you believe in God, I don't assume people believe in God. I happen to. And so for me, it's shorthand, I suppose, for inspiration. If we believe in God's created world, then we're going to need to act, as I have been trying to do now for a long time. Secondly, we just recently read in Shul Leviticus 25, verse 23, which is my favorite verse in all of the Bible. God reminds us in that verse, quote, "The earth is God's and not ours," right? That's not what the verse says, but that's the implication. It's not ours. It belongs to this power greater than to all of us. And for you are but strangers and residents with me, says God. In other words, we're migrants. We're here and then we're gone. We belong to the vastness of the cosmos, but not necessarily any particular plot of land. So how do I understand that verse? We're not the owners of this planet. We can't do whatever we want with it. I actually like to think of us as guests on this planet, and we're here even for just a relatively brief visit. If we're good guests, which I always try to be, so invite me, folks, whenever I'm in town. If we're good guests, we should leave it better than we found it. So that's what I think our tradition is trying to teach us in these two ways. And then influence 3 is personal relationships. So 1 is Al Gore and the data and information of what's happening. 2 is my community, and 3 are my friends, and also the personal relationships I want to build as an advocate. So I moved back to New York soon after first seeing that Al Gore movie. I moved here in 2007 from California, and I immediately bumped into Mirla Goldsmith, who happened to be an old Young Judea friend of mine. I've known Mirla since we were actually in college together, and in college we worked together in Young Judea. So now how wonderful that we get back together with each other. And ultimately, Mirla pushed me back into a much more active engagement with climate, and in 2016, Mirla and I, with a wonderful rabbi in Chicago named Hody Nemes, we founded Jewish Climate Action Network, NYC. And I love that Alexandra did this thing with the letters, because I'm about to do that, not knowing that she was going to do that. We founded JCAN New York. So the J is for every Jew that we want to join this fight of ours. And C is a fight to save our climate. A is to take meaningful action as activists and as advocates. And N, to use our Jewish networks to reach out and encourage climate action in our synagogues, day schools, camps, federations, JCCs, as well as non-Jewish networks that we are also very involved in, that are larger and can be more effective than our tiny little mighty JCAN. And so I love it that there's an overlap, a Venn diagram between what Alexander was saying and what I'm talking about now, because I think every single one of us has to find our way into this work. So you name it, we should be reaching out and teaching and activating the Jewish community about climate everywhere we can and every time we can. So I did mention Mirla as my co-founder, and I want to emphasize, because of that no one of us can do this work alone. No one of us, all of us on the screen and all of the people listening, wherever you are or in the future, have to join in. We have to do it in community. And Mirla and I did just that by building up JCAN. And she did just that when she moved to DC and went on to the Jewish Earth Alliance, which is a wonderful organization. So Mirla basically taught me the power in building personal relationships that make the crucial difference in our advocacy work. And now finally, in the time left to me, I'm going to give you a glimpse of what we're doing as advocates at JCAN, because I think it's been successful, and it offers a really important model for all of us to think about as we move forward. And so in JCAN, we meet frequently with the New York State Assembly folks and senators, and we get to know them. And we also get to know their chiefs of staff. We've discovered actually the key to getting to the senators are their chief of staffs. So make friends as soon as you can by calling them up and saying, hey, can we meet? Can we have coffee? I want to talk. If not the chief of staff, somebody in the office of that particular assembly person or senator. I'm going to give you 2 examples from state senators right now. Those are the 2 that stood out with me when I was asked to talk about advocacy. So 2 quick examples of the significance of personal relationships. I'm going to start with New York State Senator Robert Jackson, who represents Washington Heights and Inward in Manhattan. In our very first meeting with Senator Jackson, he pulled out his notes from his very first meeting that very day on the climate crisis that he had ever attended. It was amazing. This is before COVID, so I would say 2018, something like that. He had just become a state senator a few months earlier, and he read out to us. I can remember how excited he was, the things he learned that day about climate. And then he followed up with all sorts of questions of us. Immediately, we were in this give and take with this wonderful senator. And after that, we met him a number of times. We asked him to come speak at one of our meetings. We had him come and we, what's the word for this? Profiled him at a big international Jewish conference on climate. We asked him to come and talk about what it meant to be a senator, learning about climate. And then he ended up literally with the name, one of our networks of people called him this, climate champion. New York Renews, for anyone who lives or works in New York, you've probably heard of a really great, large, sprawling organization. It's an umbrella for about 300 groups. They call him a climate champion, our friend, Senator Jackson. And now he got the endorsement of the League of Conservation Voters, who described him in the following manner. Jackson is a strong proponent, and as you listen to what they think is important about what he does, you can also get hints or reinforce what you know is important in this work. So Jackson is a strong proponent of offshore wind development, the transition to electric vehicles for public transport fleets, and the expansion of recycling and waste reduction programs. Jackson is an advocate for the redesigning of energy grids to support the transition away from fossil fuels. And if reelected, Jackson will continue to fight for green buildings, low carbon energy sources, food and plastic waste reduction, and natural resource protection, unquote. This is a person we just saw the very first day. He said, what's this with the climate crisis? Here he is, 6 years later, doing this amazing work. And by the way, he's a huge crusader for climate justice in his neighborhood, which is Washington Heights and Inward. There's a lot of African Americans. I'm speaking too fast. I'm getting too passionate, but I'm really excited by what he did. And I'm not taking credit for it, but what I'm saying in this example is how important it is to build up your allies, especially people who have real power. He helped support and write some of the legislation that is in the New York State Senate. So one last example, a little briefer because I'm probably running out of time, is somebody named New York State Senator Brad Hoylman Segal. And Senator Brad Hoylman Segal converted to Judaism after taking some classes with a rabbi who happens to be a member of JCAN NYC. It's not because of JCAN that he converted. He fell in love with another man who's Jewish and wanted to be part of his family, so he converted. But thanks to Rabbi Judith, we met the senator for a number of times, and he got the endorsement of the same League of Conservation Voters. And this is how they described Brad Hoylman Segal. He has been a staunch supporter of the environment during his decade-long tenure in the Senate. In addition to his previous service on the Environmental Conservation Committee, he has co-sponsored a number of crucial pro-environmental bills, such as the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the New York Heat Act, which is right up right now and might have been voted about today, and the Birds and Bees Protection Act. We also had that person come and speak to us, Deborah Glick. My point, it's really all about relationships built up over time. We need information, we need energy, persistence, patience, and connection to support and encourage those who really can make a difference in this work by crafting legislation to protect our environment. So with that, I would like to start and say, go connection.
Yes, that was amazing. You're absolutely right. It is all about relationships, and the story of moving from someone who was just learning about climate change to being a climate champion in 6 years is remarkable. It just shows you the power of relationships and finding the right person. And yes, there are a lot of people who might support climate issues and support environmental justice and support environmental legislation, but those people need a champion, like a legislative champion, a climate change champion who will lead the charge, and that you found and helped create a climate champion is really just quite wonderful. So kudos to you for the contributions that you make. And you're right, none of us can claim sole, sort of sole responsibility for making that change happen, but we can be a contributing factor to it. And we all together, we can make a difference, which means that I now will turn to Mirala, who has been showing us how to make a difference by creating coalitions so that we all join together and truly can move the needle on climate issues and other legislation. So Mirala, let me send this over to you.
Okay, well, what more can I really say? But I'll try. I will try. So I'm Mirala Goldsmith, and I wanted to start out by telling you about something that happened to me a few years ago. I was in the process of moving from New York, where I had the great pleasure of working with Adriane, to Washington, D.C. And I went on this tour of the very first offshore wind farm in the United States. It's the Block Island Wind Farm. Block Island is a little holiday island off the shore of Rhode Island. And the reason they put the wind farm there is that power on this island was provided by a diesel generator, which was on the main street of the town. So you can imagine how unpleasant that was. You get off the ferry and you're looking to go to the beach and you're smelling the diesel fumes and hearing the noise of this diesel generator. So that community was really motivated to support this offshore wind farm. I was fortunate to go and visit with an interfaith group sponsored by Green Faith, and we took a ferry out to see the 5 wind turbines off the coast. And when we got there, we kind of, I don't know what you call it, but the boat sort of stayed in position under the great wings, the blades of the wind turbine, and they're turning. And we had an interfaith ceremony celebrating clean energy on the deck of the boat. And we had some prayers and we had some songs. And then Rabbi Joel Abraham of New Jersey got up to speak. And he talked about how in Hebrew, ruach, the word ruach, which means wind, also means spirit and breath. And he talked about how wind energy can bring us, the wind that brings us the life itself, can also bring us clean and life-supporting renewable energy. And I was very moved by this whole thing. And I thought, what am I going to do now that I'm in Washington? Before I was active in New York, but now I'm moving to Washington. Got to find a new way to be involved. And what would you want to do if you're in Washington? You know, it's a great opportunity to be involved with the federal government. Okay, I'm trying to advance my slide. Now, who can tell me what I'm doing wrong? Let's see. Okay. So basically, I want to talk about why advocacy is so important and how you can be involved in it. We need to make changes in order to address climate change and get our world back on a safe and healthy and just path on an individual level, a community level, and a systemic level. So advocacy is that systemic level, but they're all really connected. We have to be motivated as individuals. And if we take some basic actions as individuals, we feel more credible and more comfortable with telling others about them. That's one of the most important things that we can do to address climate change. But to really be effective, we have to get together, like Adriane was talking about. And who better to get together and do things in community than Jews? We are experts in community, and we need to mobilize our communities. And that power is what we can use to make systemic change. So I want to give you a couple of examples from my own community. We found out in my state that we had just passed a legislation to make it possible for developers to build what are called community solar fields. So this is for people who can't put solar panels on their roof and generate their own solar energy. They can subscribe to buy their solar energy, their electricity, from a community solar field. And this guy, he's the guy on the right, Gary, he's a Jewish developer, and he was going to build the first community solar field in Maryland. And he needed subscribers so he could show his financial backers that he would be able to sell this electricity. I think he needed 900 subscribers. So our synagogue decided to do a campaign. And this was before the solar field was even built. So you can just imagine what it was like explaining to people how this works and how they were going to pay and how, it's not going to come on for a few months, but eventually you're going to be really proud that you did it. And we started this campaign and we were able to get 75 families to sign up for the first community solar field in Maryland. So that was advocacy that we took action on an individual level, but we did it as a group so that we could really have an impact. What was great about that, and this is the dedication. As you can see, we went to see the solar field and we said a blessing, blessing the divine who is the creator of the world and creates the power of the sun, which is allowing us to do this. So that's what we did. Okay. And the next campaign we did was getting people to switch to a credit card with a socially responsible issuer. So I'm sure many of you have heard about the fact that our big banks are financing fossil fuel projects, and we want them to stop. There are many campaigns out there to get people to move their money out of those banks. But I learned from Green America, which is a great organization, that the easiest thing for people to do, to take the first step, is to switch their credit card. It's a lot easier than switching all your bank accounts. So we did a campaign in our synagogue and we got 36 members to actually sign up for a socially responsible credit card with an issuer that does not invest in fossil fuels. And that also created a lot of excitement and interest in the congregation. Here you can see some of the people who switched their credit cards. Well, my friends. Well, but when we took all these individual actions as a community, it started to get people more interested in the systemic change and being involved in advocacy. So we got involved in a county-wide campaign, which was to implement a new general plan, which would basically address climate change by improving transportation, changing the zoning so that we could have more dense housing, providing more affordable housing. It was great on all levels of sustainability. So we did a campaign to get our members to support that plan. And the way we did that, I'm sure you'll love our idea, is that we had Shabbat dinners and we invited everybody to come to these Shabbat dinners, and our committee members were trained to facilitate a conversation about the plan. And we thought this was especially important because as basically white suburbanites, we were concerned that our members might not really understand the importance of this plan. So we wanted to be sure that we got them educated so they could support it. Now, from doing all of that, people got more comfortable with advocacy, and we started participating in lobby nights that our local environmental organizations organized for us in Annapolis, our state capital. So this is one of our groups that went to Annapolis. So how does all this relate to Jewish Earth Alliance? Well, what I learned from all of my organizing is that it's kind of hard for people to all of a sudden wake up one morning when they realize they want to do something about climate change and figure out what to do. So Jewish Earth Alliance makes it easy for you in your congregation to mobilize your members to take action. We do it on the federal level because we're based here in Washington, D.C. You can do the same thing at the state level, and I encourage you to do so. But if you want to support democracy and make a difference in our dysfunctional Congress, I suggest that you get involved in our activities. I'm not going to go into any long stories about our impact, but I just want to say one thing. This picture in the middle, that's a representative, Representative Engel. He's no longer in Congress, but at the time he was. And we happened to run into him at a rally outside the Capitol. And the amazing thing was that because we'd been doing this advocacy, just as Adriane said, it's all about building relationships. Because we'd been doing it for a couple of years and we'd been going to his office, we had met one of his legislators. When we saw him at this rally, we actually knew who he was and we knew what we wanted to ask him. And we were able to lobby him on the spot. He didn't accede to our request immediately, but he said, get in touch with my staff person. We did that after the rally. We asked him to co-sponsor a 100% clean energy bill that was at the time being considered in Congress. And what do you know? He did co-sponsor it. Now, people always ask me, what kind of an influence can we as Jews have at the federal level? You're talking about, we're 1% of the population. I learned this from a friend of mine who's Unitarian, and she started a social action group here in Washington. And she said the Unitarian friends of hers used to say to her, there are so few Unitarians, how can we make any influence? And what she would say to them is, no one ever said that about the Quakers. If you're involved in advocacy, you know about the Friends Coalition for National Legislation. They're extremely active. Well, it turns out there are only 60,000 Quakers in the whole United States. And maybe you'll be surprised to hear there are only 200,000 Unitarians. There are a lot more of us, so we can have an influence. Another question people often ask me is, can congregations actually get involved in advocacy? And the answer is unequivocally yes. If a board member or the executive director at your congregation says, we're not allowed to get involved in advocacy because we're a congregation, you tell them they are wrong. And you can look it up in this wonderful guide called Speak Truth to Power that was put out by the Union for Reform Judaism, which you can find on our website, JewishEarthAlliance.org, under resources. So how do we do it? We can provide speakers for your community. We do all the research in Washington to create a monthly action alert. We give you who to contact, background on the issue, basically give you all the tools so you can weigh in on an important climate solution that's being considered in Congress or in the federal government, in a federal agency at this time. We also have a monthly network briefing online where you can come to learn more about the issues and meet other activists. And then one of the most impactful things we do is twice a year, we do virtual lobby days. So you can meet your members of Congress or their staff by participating right from your home. This is just to show you where you find on our website our action alerts. You can see we have one every month. Here's something else we do that you could do in your congregation, which is to do a photo petition. You can take the information from our action alert and then take photos of people and send them to your members of Congress. I love this one, so I put it in there. Isn't that cute? That was during the pandemic. People couldn't even get out of their cars, but we still managed to do a petition. And here's something about our next lobby day. We have them on Tu B'Shvat and Tisha B'Av. And I'm going to put the link in the chat as soon as I can manage that. But you can sign up and we do everything. We prepare you. You can come on our briefing, learn about the issues. We have volunteer leaders who know how to facilitate the meetings. All you have to do is sign up, read the background material, and show up for the meeting. For our last lobby day, we had 300 Jews across the country in 38 meetings. This is an example of one of our action alerts. And now I'd like to invite you to take action with me. So right now we're part of an interfaith coalition led by the Sisters of Mercy to introduce a bill in Congress that would prevent the importation of products made from illegally deforested land. So we know we need to keep our forests intact as part of our climate strategy to make sure that all the carbon that's trapped in those forests is preserved. And one of the ways we as Americans can make a difference here is by not buying products that came from illegal deforestation. So if you'd like to join me, do we have time for this, Nina? Are we okay?
Yes, we have about 6 minutes.
Okay, I'd like to invite everyone to take action with me. So you can either use this link to find your senator. If you know one of your senator's names, you can just Google them, go to their website, and find the page where it says contact your senator. This bill is actually being sponsored by Senator Brian Schatz and Senator Mike Braun. It's a bipartisan bill. If either of you are in their state, you should definitely say thank you for co-sponsoring the bill. But I'm guessing that none of you are from their state. So we'll go right on here. And you can open up there where it says contact on your senator's webpage, and you can send them a message. Anyone have any questions about that so far? Let me get some feedback. Has anyone found their senator's webpage? Okay, Adriane, very good. Now I meant to put this into the chat, so it'll be easier for
I was
you.
going to say, if you can put the link in the chat, that would be
Yes,
great.
okay, that's a lot.
And then should we just, and then you want us to copy? at
Yeah,
least
you
the
can,
first line?
you
Yep,
can copy the message, which I am going to put in the chat.
that's great.
I prepared that before, but it's just a lot of things to remember all at once.
Yep.
Okay, here's the message. Or you make your own message. One of the things that we really encourage is that you personalize your message, because our members of Congress get many, many emails that are exactly the same. You know, when you click on that button that says email my member of Congress, and it sends them a duplicate email. So nobody's really reading that. Maybe they count up how many are there, so it's worth doing it. But we know that a personal message really has a lot more impact. So put your personal, your personal thought in there.
Now, did you also put the link to where you find your senator as well?
Yes, I'll put the link to there as well. Oops. Link to find your senator.
Great.
I can't put that in. I can't find it right now. But if you just Google, who is my senator? It will come up. Okay. And if you've sent a message, please put in the chat, done. If you want to put your senator, who you actually contacted, that would be great also. How you doing, Asher? Did you find your senator?
Yeah, I always personalize it more than I.
Good.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
love personalizing. This is a very important bill, and right now we're just starting to build up the support for it. One of the things about working on the federal level is things take a long time, but it's all about persistence. So it could very well be that your legislator might not even know about this bill yet, just as Adriane was saying that her senator, her state senator, didn't really know much about climate change.
So Mirla, before we run out of time, you want to say anything more about the pre-Tisha B'Av event?
I just want to say that we would love to have you participate in Lobby Day. And I put the link for registering in the chat. So you might want to click on that and open it. So afterwards you can fill out our form and spread the word. And we would love to support you in engaging your congregations in advocacy. Thank you for your attention.
Amazing work. You have built this amazing organization from nothing essentially to now. And how many states are you?
I don't know how many states, but we did lobby 38 senators in the last lobby day. So that's, we're getting there.
You are definitely getting there. You've got people all over the country galvanized about this and engaged, and your webinars are great. Your monthly meetings are wonderful. So I encourage people to participate in those as well. Erin, you were kind enough to join us. Let me give you a couple of minutes to say something that you might want to say, to share, to continue to inspire us to get engaged with JYCM.
Sure. Yeah, I'll introduce myself. I'm Erin. I'm a national coordinator at JYCM. I've been here for the past few years. I'm also a rabbinical student. Something I love about working with these very inspiring high schoolers and college students is the radical optimism that I see. A lot of times climate grief, climate anxiety can be so all-encompassing, but I really find that this group informing this community and organizing together are really building something strong and resilient. One of my favorite teachings from our tradition is, the Israelites in crossing the Red Sea didn't know that they were going to be redeemed. They didn't even have enough time to bake bread, famously. And yet, as soon as they crossed, Miriam and all the women brought out their timbrels to dance. I think it's a beautiful teaching about planning for joy, planning for celebration, planning for optimism, and holding on to that radical joy, and a positive vision of the future that I think is really strong at JYCM in particular. Yeah, I am so happy to see you all on this call. I'll drop my email in the chat if anyone wants to connect. And I know we'll see you at the Tisha B'Av Lobby Day. I know we're co-sponsoring, which we're really excited about. And if you have any young people in your life, please send them our way. We'd love to talk to them about getting involved. I'll also put the link to our website in the chat.
Fabulous. Yes, when young people have hope, it gives the rest of us hope. So we're riding on the behind in the wind behind you, you know, because of that, because we can get frustrated, we can get disappointed, we can start to despair. And so that will only lead to one outcome, which is not what we want. The only way to get to the outcome that we want is by engaging, and that would be so exciting. I will mention in the last minute or two one other initiative that the conservative movement is going to hopefully undertake, in addition to recruiting more synagogues and other Masorti conservative movement institutions to join the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition. We know that in order to make the kind of systemic changes that we need to make systemic changes in the way our institutions are structured. And just as we have, you know, chairs or presidents and vice presidents or vice chairs and financial officers and secretaries in our boards, we need to have a standing position of what we're calling a chief sustainability officer on the board level of all of these institutions, because it can't be just that we pursue sustainability episodically. It has to be something that is endemic, that is systemic to the entire institution. And we don't always realize, and boards don't always realize, how certain decisions, waste decisions, procurement decisions, food decisions, events, how we can structure events, certainly the energy, transportation, our parking lot, our physical plant, how all of these have impact sustainability and climate change, and the value and the quality of life that our communities, you know, live. So if we hope that we can maybe have in 5 years, well, let's say 4 years, by the new Shemitah cycle, chief sustainability officers in all of our Masorti institutions, that would be incredible. So we hope to work with JYCM in your initiatives, and maybe that would be something that would be part of it as well. Go from program to structure, and Mirala and Ace and all of you, and Joelle, we would love to work with you too, if we can do that in the local area, to make sure that we create the fundamental structures to make sure that we have systemic responses and comprehensive responses to climate change issues. That would be ideal. And Shemitah year, 4 years from now, that'll be our goal. Okay. Thank you all so much for coming. Ace, thank you for being here. Mirala, thank you for being here. Aaron, thank you for being here. Thank Alexandra as well. Thank the rest of you for participating. There's only one way we're going to get this done, and that's by doing it together. So let's get cracking. Let's do this together. Thank you all. Remember, you can see the recording if you wish on the conservative movements. United Synagogues. Hang on 1 second. Let me get rid of that. On the United Synagogue for Conservative Judaism's YouTube page. So YouTube chapter. So thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.